Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining She Constructs. I'm here today with Danielle Shaw. She is a journeyman ironworker welder with the local 97 Ironworkers in Vancouver, British Columbia. Welcome, Danielle.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about how you got into this industry, into this role of being an ironworker.
Well, it was completely random, and I I don't know what the trade schooling training is like in Ontario, but in BC here, I went to welding school, and I didn't even really know how to read a tape measure. I was just went to welding school, learned to weld, got my tickets, and then I hit the pavement with hundreds of resumes trying to find a job. And that was a hard go, very discouraging. Lots of comments like, "You don't look like a welder. We lift heavy things. Women are kind of distracting on the job," over and over and over. And a fellow student of mine told me he'd started working with the Ironworkers, and I had no idea what they were or what they did. So I just need a welding job. I need some money. And I went in there one day, dropped off a resume, and probably about a month later, I got a call, and they sent me out. I had no idea what it was, and I haven't stopped since. And it's been, it's been a kind of a wild ride of conquering fears and being uncomfortable and getting used to, new experiences, and it's been awesome. So
Why don't you take a minute and tell us about what your day looks like? What does an ironworker do? Because I think that people get welding and ironworking confused, or they're not sure.
yeah, so ironworking is it's a vast variety of things. Your day can look very different. You typically see ironworkers who are, you see those guys putting big beams up and columns in the cities, like big sky rises and apartments. That's typically ironworkers that are working with cranes and a lot of rigging and working with cranes and bolting up connecting pieces together. There's also a reinforcing side, which I don't have much experience with, but it's the rebar side of things. So you see people who are working with concrete. So they're tying all the rebar pieces together. That's the reinforcing aspect of ironworking. And then, so there's building new structures. There is working on bridges. So building bridges, that's a big, usually typically ironworkers. And then there is usually there's kind of mill worker shutdowns. So, gas plants and pulp mills and cement plants and refineries. Once a year, they have a big shutdown and they come in and do maintenance. So it's usually ironworkers go in for that and say, replace old steel with new steel or fix things. And the ironworking aspect is a lot of rigging and fabricating and connecting with bolts and working with cranes and connecting things. But
I kind of have that vision of that picture from New York where you have those guys sitting up on that giant beam up in the air eating lunch.
Those are ironworkers.
Right?
Exactly. So, but sometimes, you see people and they're connecting bolts together or connecting columns and beams together with bolts, but odd time you need to connect a piece where there isn't bolts. So you usually have welders going in and welding connections together or adding things so, it's two trades in one where I work as an ironworker and I weld with this trade. So I almost consider welding now like a secondary trade to my ironworking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
how many women are in your field? Like, how many do you work with women daily? Are they rare to find?
They are rare. The numbers are getting better. I've only, in reinforcing with our trade, there actually tends to be quite a few women, but I haven't typically worked any reinforcing, so I haven't met any of them. I have met the odd girl here and there, just through some training stuff, but I've only ever actually worked with one other girl in my trade.
How did you get into construction then?
Well, I worked in healthcare as a care aide or maybe a nurse's assistant, we call them in Ontario. And, you know, you hear everything nowadays, how it's just come to light more about these care homes. You're overworked, you're understaffed, you're busting your butt, and you're trying to do the best job. So I worked really, really hard. I'd be running all day, just running. And I'm like, man, you hit a cap with some of those wages. And I was like, man, I know there's these guys out here that I'm working way harder than these guys. Twice what I make right now. I'm like, if I can work this hard doing something else and making more money. So I think that's when I started to venture off, because I was just getting sick of, you know, I just see this bolt of a guy just be like, oh, I'm just sweeping up construction dust and I make $30 an hour. I'm like, what? Really? That's it? So I was like, I knew that I could just go off and pursue something else where I can actually, you know, at that time I was single and I'm like, well, I don't want to wait for some guy, you know, to be with so I can make some, like, I want to do that for myself. And so I think that's kind of what took me off was, you know, there's a lot of women who don't give them enough credit. Like, we have hard, underpaid jobs, and there's jobs out there, and you already have the work ethic. So if you could just carry that on to something else, there's good money out there to be made.
Yeah, that is for sure. How many years have you been doing this?
Well, I started ironworking about 5-ish years or maybe 6 years ago. I have also had 2 babies in that time, so I missed almost like a first pregnancy, and you know, we work at heights a lot, and everything about my job at that time, and I was at the end of the job anyways. I was like, there's nothing safe here for me. And I was uncomfortable, so I went back to the care home for that remainder 8 months.
Oh, okay. And so I just want to interrupt you for a moment and talk about being pregnant on the job site and what that kind of was like and the work modifications that had to happen. Because I think for women that are looking at construction, you know, if they're in the world or mindset of having a family, that question is always on their mind. And I know that unfortunately there are some employers out there that can be swayed heavily by the amount of modifications they would have to make to a woman's job because of that. So tell us a little bit about modifications during your pregnancy.
Well, first time around was kind of my choice. I always did that care home job as a backup, and I'm glad I did. This second time, I actually worked up until 30 weeks ironworking. Thankfully, on this job, I had a great crew. Them before I was pregnant, so they knew I was a good worker. I wasn't just. They really wanted to help me out, to assist me to keep working as long as I could. But it's not easy. It's really. I'm very fortunate. I'm in a union that they're really trying to support more women in these trades. But I find it can be complicated of like not feeling guilty on a certain job. Thankfully, where I was working was it was an oil refinery. So there's big money, you know, the grand scheme of things of me being on like lighter duties, you know, and they maybe brought in somebody else. It's not going to really hurt their pocket. But some of those mom and pop jobs, like I went to a job for just a few weeks in the middle there, and it was just one guy. And with our trade, we just get dispatched. So, you know, it's pretty fast paced sometimes with the smaller little jobs, and the guys are just really trying to make a buck. And I had a great boss too, and he really tried to accommodate me. But I knew, I was like, man, this guy, it's just me and this guy, and he needs some. one worker is on modified duties, that's
Mm-hmm.
challenging for him. And he really was kind and considerate, but yeah, so that was tough. And I know for some women who aren't in unions, whatever trade it is, there is it's, you feel guilty because already as a woman on jobs, you feel like you have to kind of prove yourself worthy. Like, no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
an asset to this crew, I'm an asset to this trade, and I'm an asset to this job. Um, and once you kind of get to that place, I feel like you can kind of cruise along. But I feel like almost a lot of women feel that. And so when all of a sudden you feel like all of a sudden you've got this complication that's like, I can't actually lift that anymore, or I need more help. There's a guilt of like, am I
Mm-hmm.
an asset? Are they going to look at me as a burden? Um,
I
so
think that women carry that feeling with them regardless of their position. You probably would have felt that way anyways if you were still in the healthcare system, right? You were there, you would have had modifications there too. So I think that's something that we also just as women carry with us.
it's true. And it's, I thankfully I had a really accommodating crew and they really tried to help me out. And I was more, it wasn't as complicated or difficult for me this time around, but I do know I've heard of some women who are in the non-union ironworking aspect, and they thought they had this little great company that loves them, and as soon as they got pregnant, it was like, oh well, gosh, geez, we can't afford to have somebody just sitting there sorting through the cleaning the tools or on.
Mm.
So and they feel really guilty, and yeah, it's they're we're trying to get more women in the trades, but there's still these hurdles of,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's nice for me that I know my union is really trying to support us, especially for, I think I was like maybe the first pregnant ironworker. So a lot of things to help other women if they want to get in the trades to pursue these careers. And um, it's can be like, how can I do this trade? Do I have to pick a trade or do I have to pick my family? And it's nice to be able to
Right.
do so.
Tell me, if you don't mind, about a mentor that you've had that was either phenomenal or super fail. And I guess they wouldn't be a mentor if they were super fail, but I guess someone in seniority of yourself that should have been a mentor.
I've definitely had a lot of both. Um, I I've actually had a lot of great mentors, and if anybody who I've worked with heard this, be like, oh, I hate to single one person out because there's been a lot of great ones. I guess my one that really stands out is because, like, when you work in a job, you work till the job's over, and then you get dispatched to another job, whole new crew of people, location, foreman, supervisor. That job ends, same thing. So it's over and over, new job, new, and you're meeting a lot of different people. But I always had the same. I got lucky my first couple of years. I always had the same foreman, just ended up on the same job. So he kind of really watched me grow. He's now our dispatcher, and his name's Matt Hawken. But like, I think what stands out about him was that he just kind of, from the beginning, treated me just at a level where it's like, okay, you're an apprentice. Here's your duties. He was never disrespectful, but he was always very encouraging. He just treated me as like as an equal worker.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like there was any special treatment. I just felt like seen as a worker, and here's the task. You can do it. And he just always gave me advantages and push me towards trying new things. Sometimes that apprentices don't get to do very often. Sometimes their first year is just pushing your broom and cleaning the shack.
Right.
As a welder, sometimes the stigma is you just get stuck behind the welding lid and you're not doing much rigging or connecting or the other ironworking aspect. And he always got me out doing all the aspects of the trade on every job. And, he was hard on me when I needed to be, it's like, hey, Danielle, this is how it goes. I'm like, okay, And also very encouraging. So I feel like I learned a lot from him. I got to experience a lot, and he pushed me in great ways. So I also had lots of other foremen who've done the same thing. He's just was on a lot of jobs.
I'm sure that was helpful, right? Because then he got to kind of know you too as an individual, as to what your capabilities were and where your weaknesses were, and be able to help you strengthen those weaknesses.
Yeah. So, I mean, you always look back. I'm sure anybody looks back in their first year of apprenticeship to once they're done, like, oh, God, that must have been. Oh, wow, they were so with me. So.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. What about a terrible situation that you may want to share with us?
Oh gosh, well, there hasn't been too many. There has been the odd one. I had this one foreman, and I was a new apprentice too, and I didn't. So you just like your voice isn't just kind of more burdened, like, okay, just get the job done. And okay, so on that note about terrible people, I guess I had this one guy, and he was just on. I think he was just on drugs a lot. It was hard because he actually taught me a lot. He really always took the time to teach me things. He was an old guy, and he just referred to me as his sexy little partner. And I was like, hey, you pretty little lady, all day. And he just referred to me as babe. And I'm just like, but he felt like he was so unstable. I just didn't. It was just not a great scenario, and I was too intimidated. He was just such a burly old man. Like, can you not, please? So it was a little tough dealing with that. I think now, if I would have been further into my career, I would have been standing up for myself a bit more. Sorry,
it's part of the game.
So, but I've actually had, on the whole, like, better experiences, I think. I don't know if it is just because being in a union, you just you can't get away with as much stuff anymore, and you have a hall. So if I ever had a problem, it's like, well, I've got a hall to back me up. And not that I've never gone that route. I've never really had to just kind of deal with on my own or in-house, but yeah. So
let's end with some advice that you may have for a young woman or that's looking to enter the industry, or a woman that is currently in the industry that may be struggling a little bit in her position. What advice do you have for them?
Well, one thing I just think is give yourself more credit than you might. All right, because we do have great work ethics, and I think being women in truth, we do bring a lot of different variety to the table. It's nice. I feel like it really helps a crew out when you have kind of some diversity, and there is, if you're not in a union, if you're in a union, that's great. And if you're struggling, reach out within your hall. But if you're not, in BC, we have, it's called it's a Facebook group called BC Women in Trades. And I'm on it, and it's all different trades. And I'm sure Ontario or whatever province somebody's in, finding support groups for their province. But daily, people are either posting positive experiences from their job or negative. And if anybody else has experienced this, and it's just bombarded with advice, tips, and it's a great support system for people. And people can reach out in private message, and I've done that for people, or people have done that for me. It's like, I'm really struggling with this right now. There's women out there who, somebody up in Prince George, and I'm down here in Squamish, that is chatting with. So there is support there. And there is so many aspects to trades. So, just do your research, and there's a lot of different careers out there. So some people might think like, oh, I don't want to get too dirty, or some people do want to get dirty, or, there's different types of women. There's all kinds of different trades that are, once, sometimes you're on the elements a lot more, sometimes you're, working inside. I think there's a trade for every woman if they are somewhat interested in that aspect. So, yeah. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, the only thing holding yourself back is you. So just get out there.
I like that. The only thing holding you back is you. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today, Danielle. We're going to let you get back to your routine there with your little guy.
I know, he did one cameo.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Okay, it was great chatting with you, Paul, and I'm so glad we got to connect.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Well,